going on, everybody? Welcome in to another edition of Huskers Alive, and we got a game this week. Penn State. And
feels like
yeah, it does. It does. It was weird last Saturday not having any games. I had to occupy my time with all the other games, find out what I wanted to watch. But it was interesting. Trying to now that we got ESPN back, YouTube TV and ESPN got their agreement back in order. At least we have that going for us, because that was about to get really bad on my nerves. Luckily I didn't cancel YouTube TV. I kept it. Everybody else crash canceled, and so I don't know if
Hulu or whatever.
Yeah, I had Hulu TV first, like a couple years back. Terrible. I refuse to go back to that. So, but we got Penn State this week, and Nebraska comes in as underdogs against a 4-win team. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, see if we agree kind of where the spread is at right now, which I think at 9.5.
It opened at 10.5, so it means it's come down,
I think it's somewhat, which makes sense. But we'll dive into kind of how we feel about that, and a little bit about the game, how we think it's going to go. But Brian, first off, man, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I got some dogs joining me in the back. If my newly adopted Chihuahua starts making noises, I apologize about that. She's kind of been on my nerves today, but she's a puppy, so she's still kind of learning how to leave me alone a little bit. So right now she's sleeping, so I think we're okay. But that's Malibu in the back, in case anybody was wondering. So she wanted to pop on the stream for a little bit. It's been raining today, so she's just a little bit scared right now. She's not a fan of the rain.
Ass off here.
I took her on a walk. She wanted to go every time I come home from work. She wants to go on a walk, and I was trying to tell her it's about to rain, and she insisted we go on a walk. So we get on a walk, and of course we get about as far away from the house as I normally go before I turn around, and then the rain starts, and then she's freaking the absolute hell out trying to get back to the house. So
naturally,
that was fun. Walking 3 dogs is a journey in and of itself, especially when 2 of them are big and have long strides, and you have a little Chihuahua that doesn't. So kind of end up dragging the Chihuahua along half the time.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's go ahead and dive into, first off, let's get started with a little bit of recruiting notes. We talked about some of the recruiting stuff on Friday, and we've actually had some stuff transpire since we talked. So Brian, do you want to dive into that a little bit, those notes a little bit?
Yeah, there was one guy we didn't talk about, which was Oklahoma State cornerback Carrington Pierce, who Nebraska was the first, and as of right now is the only Power 4 school, if I'm not mistaken, to offer him. Obviously, with the coaching change down in where they play, Stillwater, Oklahoma, with that coaching change, you get a certain period of time, even if it's during the season, to enter the portal. He entered during this period, which was 30 days. And Nebraska extends an offer. This is a big physical corner, 6'2", 190 pounds. Came from the JUCO ranks last season, and Nebraska actually had tried to get him at the very end of last year's recruiting cycle. This was like a blip on the radar, so we didn't really spend much time talking about him this time last year because he ended up committing to Oklahoma State pretty quickly. So Nebraska is circling back here 12 months later. He is more of a project guy, similar to those guys we're talking about on Friday. Just one of those guys, you look at the athletic traits, basketball player in college at the JUCO level, and then even in high school. So he's very, very raw for a corner, but you like that 6'2" frame that's 190 pounds. Obviously, athleticism for basketball does translate a little bit to the football field, especially with the hip fluidity as a corner. So this is one to watch. He's coming in for the Iowa game. And then the other 2 we had talked about as well on Friday, the big physical interior offensive lineman, 6'4", 340, May Te'elua. I have no idea. I know I'm butchering it.
First team all name. Great job. I'll give you credit where it's due. It's a good attempt.
I gave an effort there. But this is a big one. On Friday, this is why I love recruiting, because things change so quickly. So on Friday, we're thinking, Nebraska's pretty loaded with their 2026 recruits right now. They already had 4 or 5 on the offensive line board for the class of 2026. They're going to try and hit the portal, obviously, in this offseason coming up. And I wasn't expecting much movement from this particular individual. I'm going with Meka or Makai or something like that. However, once his official visit was confirmed, shortly thereafter or just before that visit is when Nebraska lost the commitment of Leon Noyle Jr., who Leon had visited Mississippi State prior about 2 weeks ago. And that was your official like red alert going off, because I know when Nebraska was recruiting him before his commitment, it was really down to Baylor, Nebraska, and Mississippi State, and he never took that visit to Mississippi State, which we thought would happen. And so then he does get that official visit. That was the immediate. Nebraska knew they needed to pivot. They went and found this big physical interior offensive lineman who's probably more ready-made to play next season as opposed to Leon Noyle. Now, granted, Nebraska doesn't need as much interior offensive line help, but when there's a guy this big, this physical, this athletic, you definitely want to make sure that you give them the chance to come in for a visit. You really can size them up and get a true, eye test on them to make sure what you're seeing in person matches what you see on the film. And then another JUCO prospect, linebacker Taylor Schaefer. I believe he was from Iowa Western Community College, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I really like him as an interior offensive line or interior inside linebacker in Nebraska's defense. Can play jack, can play edge, but at 6'3", 6'4", 240 pounds. This guy has like the stereotypical makings of a Big Ten linebacker, in my opinion. And then the last one, this is a high school recruit. We talked about Dylan Berrymon from Louisiana, 6'1", 6'2", 310 to 320 or 30 pounds, just depending on your recruiting service. 4-star defensive tackle that was committed to Texas, decommitted about a week or two ago. LSU is, I would say, the favorite, even though they're going through a coaching change. That's the home state school. And one thing, and Coach Bill Bush could attest to this too, like when we had him on, was LSU or Louisiana kids do not leave the state of Louisiana very often. And this is a situation where Nebraska could take advantage of that coaching change. There is a lot of drama with that coaching search right now, with the governor being involved. So can they swoop in and get Dylan to come up from the Bayou? Absolutely, it's possible. They're trying to get a visit for the Iowa game. So you got 4 confirmed official visitors for the Iowa game. So that's not too bad on a short week. Also on a 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. Central Time kickoff. Mm-hmm. That's the best part, because those are hard games to get in for visits.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And can you back out, come back in? Oh, never mind. I think we're okay. I was echoing for 5 seconds, and now we're good. So cool. I appreciate the recruiting update there. So a little bit on that. And Matt Rule, I don't know if anybody listened to the press conference at the end. He did talk about a little bit about the 26 class and the numbers and how it is a numbers game. So a lot of people harping on the 26 class. We've even had some in our comments, but 26 class, we've known this for a while, it's not going to be a big class. It's not going to be a class that it's probably going to rank dead last in the Big Ten, potentially, on sheer numbers. But it's not to be alarmed. They are attacking the JUCO ranks. They're attacking the portal, and you got the guys on the roster, a very young team as it is already. So recruiting and numbers aren't what they used to be. It's funny. Some people are like never, cared about recruiting numbers, or that they say they don't matter, but then all of a sudden are up in arms that our 26 class is ranked so low, and it's a blessing and a curse, but you got to look at the age of this team, the roster, the way they're attacking it. And it's clear the direction that they want to go. In the 27 class, again, that'll be the class we're going to reload on the freshmen. Clearly, Ahmad Hudson narrowed his schools down to top 12. And Nebraska, of course, is in his top 12.
Yeah, so, I think it's really top 3. I think it's A&M, LSU, and Nebraska.
And, yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, A&M, LSU, Nebraska probably are the 3 front runners for it. Brian's frozen in sneeze form right now, it appears. So either that
I
or
will
mine.
say,
go ahead. Sorry.
I think the order is Nebraska, LSU, A&M. I think that's the order.
Interesting. I didn't know if I was willing fully to kind of put my neck out there for that just yet, but do you believe that?
100%. Yeah.
I like the way I just feel like the 27 class that we currently have is really contributing to that, because he has a lot of guys from his class in his ear. A lot of guys from his class that really want him to be here and are making it known, especially if you're on X, you see it a lot. So
even just today.
Yes.
Again.
Yeah. A lot of peer recruiting going on. So that 27 class is has the potential to be a top 5 class in college football if everything kind of pans out, the way we think it might. So, but just you can't say enough about the peer recruiting of these guys. And, the guy we had on the show last week, if y'all saw that interview, he is going after Iowa, which you love to see on X.
Yeah.
You love to see that. Exactly. He's buying into everything that this fan base wants from him. And that just shows you, I think, further his commitment, because at least he's not going to go to Iowa now. Otherwise, he's got some tweets to answer for.
What's funny, too, is he went after Colorado.
I love that. I did see that as well.
I'll add, too, with the 27 class, if you can get Ahmad Hudson, that could open a pipeline for Nebraska and Louisiana, because it really depends on who they get as their head coach. And there is a lot of crap, I guess you could say, going on with that coaching search, because Ahmad Hudson is not the only guy Nebraska's after in Louisiana that they have a legit chance to get.
Right.
Albert Simeon, top offensive line. He's ranked 34th nationally. He'll be a 5-star before too long. He's the top 4 offensive guard in the entire country that Nebraska's in his top 3. There's more than that, too. There is probably 4 or 5 more guys in that Louisiana area that are all highly recruited that Nebraska has a legit chance to pull out from Louisiana. And if they can do that, man, that class will be insane.
Well, and Tay Ellis talked about it, and we saw Trey Taylor post about it on X, just their commitment to kind of getting some of these big guys up front as well, too. So that is one good thing about this class. I think they want this to be a complete class coming up, but a lot of good stuff happening on the recruiting front. And we got a chance to kind of make some noise this week, too, on the road to Penn State. So we'll go ahead and talk about that just a little bit. First off, Nebraska, like we mentioned in the lead of the show, is 9.5-point underdog, open as a 10.5-point underdog. But overall, how do you feel about that? Like, I feel like in some ways I get it, but it's a little steep.
I actually don't think it's too far off. This is going to sound crazy, but it's a whiteout. Penn State is now fighting for bowl eligibility to salvage. It's homecoming. It's a night game. They have a chance to salvage some of their season. Granted, they were pretty much unanimous playoff team preseason.
Yes,
obviously a disappointing year that they've still got something to play for. But when I look at their game last week,
and they have Rutgers the last week of the season, so very winnable game there for them.
Yeah, they got 2 winnable games on their schedule, and I've said that. I think Nebraska 7-3 is a little bit of fool's gold. I don't think we've had really a tough schedule this year. I think we're still a good team. I just their inability to stop the run. I mean, we got 2 games left. They ain't gonna get better. And Penn State's gonna run it just like they did last week. They ran it 50 times or 40 times. They're gonna do the exact same thing. Can Nebraska hold up for 4 quarters when Katron Allen's got 25 rushing attempts and Singleton's got 15 rushing attempts, and even Grunkmeyer had 8 scrambles, which that game late he scrambled well.
I was going to talk about Grunkmeyer a little bit because he's more athletic than people give him credit for. Now here's my thing, because listening to John Butler talking about the lead up to this game, it does, it seems like they're really, really challenging, and Matt Rule talking about it seems like they're really, really challenging these guys. Like, hey, they don't think you can stop the run. Like, can you go out there and prove them wrong? And Butler talked about there's a lot of things we do well on defense, and that's 100% true. Yeah. But it seems like this week, like he's like, if I have to go out there and make the 12th tackle, talking about tackling and stuff like that too, like I will. Do you think that extra kind of commitment and challenge to this team of like, they're going to come in and they're going to try to run the ball all over you? And I know we've had a lot of issues with mobile quarterbacks, especially, and Grunkmeyer again is more athletic than people give him credit for. But do you think, that challenge can kind of get this team up to really kind of go out there and be able to stop this run? Because the thing about it is, what they're wanting to do offensively, of course, as we know, is run the ball. But not only that, Yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit when we get into their offensive game plan, but they're going to want to try to stretch the field a little bit as well, because they're going to want to run the ball and then open it, kind of like they did against Michigan State. They kind of stretched the field a little bit, and then they opened up some of that passing. And then they're going to want to balance those two things out. But Grunkemeyer can throw the ball, and they do have some deep weapons, and he didn't really have to do it too much. But whenever he had the opportunity, they did have big pass plays. And over the last couple of weeks, especially last week, with the running game working a lot more, they were able to operate a lot more off play action, more than they have for the last 4 weeks. So that's another aspect of this too, is they're going to want to come out and operate off that play action. But yeah, do you think that commitment to stopping the run and without trying to have to commit too many extra bodies to it? Because again, if we start to do that, then that opens up what they want to do with that deep pass game. And again, Grunkemeier's gotten a lot more comfortable over the last few weeks, or over the last 2 weeks. Again, they didn't ask him to do too much because he didn't have to do too much last week. 240 yards on the ground, like, you're of course not going to have to do too much. But the 3 weeks prior to that wasn't great in terms of their overall. I think I got the numbers here. Over the previous 3 weeks before that, they had Iowa. I mean, yardage wise, they had 173 yards, but on 46 carries. Against Ohio State, they had 31 carries, 55 yards, 1.8 per carry. Indiana, 117 yards on 33 attempts. That's 3.5 on an average. So last week was the first week in the last 4 that they've gone over 4 yards per carry at 4.8, 50 attempts for 240 yards. But that really opened up a lot on play action. And so, yeah, do you think that challenge is going to be able to kind of instill confidence in them, or at least that challenge is going to fire them up to come out and make that happen?
I don't see why they don't make them try and beat them through the air, because they did have that one big pass to Doss, who's like their one big playmaker, 75-yard touchdown pass. It was a beautiful throw, beautiful play design. To me, it looked like it was a busted coverage on a cover 3, in which one person did not know it was a cover 3, and so he went in man instead of being the deep safety on the right side of the field. So, but when I look back at that game, and they had 204 yards rushing, which is a lot. It was what? I'm looking at the box score here. It was 14-10 start of the fourth quarter. If you told me Nebraska's given up 180 yards rushing and it's 14-10 in the fourth quarter, I'm not overly worried about it personally. To me, it's going to be about not letting those explosive plays kill you. You can't give up that 75-yard touchdown run or pass.
Trevor Pena is another guy. Just a heads up, Trevor Pena is a guy that's a deep ball threat. I believe he came from Syracuse, but he is a deep ball threat for them as well. Now he just kind of hasn't found his footing there overall, but he was targeted more. In Indiana, he had a really good game. I think he finally went over 100 yards last week. Didn't have a ton of yards, but was targeted the most. So Trevor Pena is a guy who can stretch the field as well. So they got a couple of guys that we're going to have to, kind of be mindful of. But
yeah, I'm not. They do have some guys. I'm not overly worried about their passing game compared to our pass defense. I mean, USC is the most prolific offense we've faced this year, and we made them look pretty pedestrian.
However, if they're running the ball at 5 yards per carry, that's going to open that up. And that's my thing. Does that become a worry? Do you think this team can come out and commit to the run? Because again, Grunkemeyer is, I believe Andy Kotelnicki is just finding a little bit more confidence. I believe, like from watching, the games back of Penn State, he just seems a little bit more comfortable. And mind you, the guy came out, and we're looking at his numbers since he started. He came out against 3 top 10 defenses. I mean, you have Iowa, Ohio State, and Indiana, and then when we had an opportunity to potentially see what he was going to do against a bad Michigan State defense, they didn't have to use him a lot. So while I'm not overly concerned with their pass game, the fact that they went last week, I believe, let me see here. I got it in my notes. They went, let me see, what was their play action percentage? So against Ohio State, 78% was non-play action, right? And they didn't have a lot of success. So when he's just dropping back and passing against Indiana, 62% was not play action. Only 37% was play action. Again, not a lot of success there. But then last week, 61% of their plays were off of play action, and they were very successful off that. Yeah. And so that's the one worry is when they do get that run game going, when they get that play action going, you know, it's going to be one of those things where I just want us to be able to come out and not have to sell out on one or the other. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. We talked about this before. It kind of is what it is. But if there's any week to kind of show that you have some fight, in that run defense, this has got to be it against these two running backs right here, because you cannot let Ethan Grunkemeyer kind of beat you with the arm, even though he's a young guy, even though he can throw the ball. You want to turn him into a drop back passer as much as possible, because all of their success comes off of play action.
Yeah. And if you can win on first down and make it so that second down is second and long, that will be huge for Nebraska, because their third down conversion last week was terrible. For the season, it's not great either. They were 2 of 10 last week on third down.
Mm-hmm.
So can you slow down the running game enough, I guess, is what I would hope. Because I don't think Nebraska is good enough or talented up front to stop it. But can we slow it down? Is that possible?
That's what we gotta do. At least slow it down enough, because if you can turn Grunkemeyer into an attempted pocket passing quarterback, like we've seen what Kotelnicki wants to do. He wants it play action, because every opportunity he's had to be a drop back passer has not been extremely successful. He reads a lot better when he's got that little bit of extra time. And so it's going to be interesting. I'm just really curious to see how our defense goes about it. I'm curious, do they stack the box? Do they send an extra guy? Because we've seen at times the defense has kind of been, at times we thought they might stack the box. It seems like we've kind of played a little bit more of a conservative style of defense at times and ramped up the aggression. So, but again, Grunkemeyer is a guy that we're going to have to also be able to just, get some pressure on, because the problem is when they start running the ball well, we've seen it happen time and time again where you get those quarterbacks a little bit more time, and then you kind of leave when you do get pressure off the edges, you leave them on an island. And Grunkemeyer is athletic enough to be able to get out of those things too and escape the pocket. So I'm curious to see how well we contain him to the pocket as well.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because last time out, Nebraska played very athletic Nico Yamaliva.
Mm-hmm.
He had 86 rushing yards in the game. UCLA had 157 for the game. UCLA's running backs, though, only averaged 3.2 yards per carry against Nebraska. If I had to give or have a number that was a sign of progress, a sign of some hope, it would be your last time out, you held UCLA to 3.2 yards per carry with their 3 running backs that carried the ball. They basically dared Nico to beat them with his arm and with his feet, and he didn't. So can Nebraska hold, I guess is a way to put it, Singleton and Katron Allen to 4.5 yards per carry? If you do that, I think you're fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because and looking at their drives from last week, early on, Michigan State came out, but I believe they scored first 57-yard touchdown run on their first snap, right? Then Penn State came out, and naturally what they're going to want to do is, march the ball down the field slowly but surely. 12-play, 75-yard drive, right? And then Penn State came out, they hit that 75-yard touchdown pass right before the half, take the lead. And then Penn State, in the fourth quarter, 76 yards in 13 plays, the 8-9 minutes of clock, 21-10 lead. We've seen Nebraska be susceptible to those long drives this season. So you have to imagine that is 100% in their game plan. They want to come out. They know, if we can get this, like you said, we need to get them in first and second and long, because they're going to come out and they're going to put themselves in short yardage situations. And if that's the case, it could be a long day for Nebraska. We got to be able to stop them on early downs. And that starts up with our tackling. Because again, you have Katron Allen. Katron Allen's going to be the guy who's, more of your downhill back. And, he's a workhorse kind of guy, over 1,000 yards. But he is he's a guy that is a load to bring down. So he has to be the focus. Like he's not going to be as he's not as well rounded as Nicholas Singleton. But that's the trouble that they give you is like, and they're going to see pretty similar amount of snaps. So I have 29 snaps for Katron Allen and 21 snaps listed for Nicholas Singleton. So it's not one of those things where you can key on, and both of them are yards after contact for Katron Allen last week was 3.64, 2.67 for Nicholas Singleton. So they're both a load to bring down. But you're going to see a lot more of those gap runs, which Nebraska, the zone runs with Nicholas Singleton, which Nebraska struggled with. They've been a little bit better against the gap runs. You're going to see those more a little bit with Katron Allen, but it's not one of those things where you can key in on one or the other because Singleton's still 6 foot, over 220 pounds, fast, dual threat kind of guy. That's where the toughness is because they have such a versatility between those two backs. And their offensive line, while at times it's been a little spotty in comparison to previous years with the run blocking, it doesn't matter when you have two running backs like that. And so it's going to be a load for these guys to be able to come in, but the tackling has to be consistent this week. And it's been like Butler mentioned, the tackling has been better. He said they've been making it a focus. Because against Minnesota, it was absolutely horrendous. And it has been better since Minnesota. I will say that much. A lot of things have.
My big thing is I think as of late, Penn State, they're not like on a heater by any means, but I think they're starting to kind of get their footing under this new temporary coaching staff because they had the abysmal loss to UCLA, the loss to Northwestern, and your rails are coming off the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Then they play Iowa tough. And in that game, they rushed for like 190 yards against Iowa, who is one of the better defenses year in and year out.
More of a volume running, but yeah. Not on.
And then the Ohio State game happened, obviously, where they got annihilated.
Ohio State's got the best defense in college football.
Yeah. But then the Indiana game, I mean, that was a really good game where they kind of blew it late. They lost 27-24. Looking just real quickly at the player stats, Katron Allen, 10 for 71. I'm sorry, 19 for 48. Nick Singleton, 10 for 71. And even Grunkmeyer has decent numbers, 22 of 31, 220 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. On a team stats perspective, they're 8 of 15 on third down. That's really solid. They had 17 first downs in the game. They averaged over 5 yards per play.
Nebraska struggled a little bit. But Nebraska struggled on third down defensively at many points this season, even in wins. Maryland was one of them. We talked about that before.
Yeah. And so I think that between that Iowa game and more so that Indiana game that carried over to Penn State, they're starting to kind of find some groove here late in the season. They're kind of finding that identity, like even what you talked about a little bit ago with them kind of trusting Grunkmeyer more. He's settling in a little bit. That's why, like, when you ask me, is the 9.5 spread too much? I'm like, I think it's actually pretty fair because of the circumstances surrounding that program and Nebraska's inability to stop the run for the duration of the entire year. And they have two of probably I put them both in top 10 in the conference in running backs, both of them. So they have a damn good 1-2 punch.
It's one of those styles makes fights situation with the spread. Can you back up, come back in?
About to do that.
Of course. Here we go with the echo. All right, Brian's going to pop back in. He's got another tab open. So give him 5 seconds, and then we'll dive into some of your comments here in a little bit. All right. Let's dive through some of these comments, and then we'll get over to the offensive side of the ball and see what we're going to expect here. William Adair, go Big Red, my friend. Nick in here, go Big Red. Appreciate you. Holy fella. Hola, fellas and y'alls. What's up, brother? Appreciate you hopping in here. Ron T, what's up, my man? Appreciate you hopping in here. My dog doesn't like rain, but loves swimming. So I have, I think, one of the few German Shepherds in the world that he's an Arizona German Shepherd, mind you. But took him hiking in Flagstaff like 2 years ago. And we got to a creek. And at that point, I realized he was scared of water. And he never had that happen before. He's also scared of stairs because our Airbnb had 3 steps. That's all he had to make it up was 3 steps. And I mean, he got to the bottom of those steps and he was like, I am not going up these. And my Chihuahuas just running laps around them. So I have a German Shepherd that's scared of water and stairs. So can never live in a 2-story home. Great day, fellas. What's going on, Rashawn? Appreciate you hopping in here. Big game in a few days. 100%. It is a huge one for us. Can prove a lot of people wrong this weekend with a big road win as an underdog. Because again, being the underdog is something that has not been kind to Nebraska. I would love to look at the numbers on kind of how we fared as an underdog over the last few years. But I would have ventured to guess it's not very good because I can't remember how many games we've won as an underdog in Matt Rule's era. Great info, Brian. Would much rather give up a couple big plays to the air than watch them dog walk us down the field. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah. I ask those questions, but at the end of the day, you got to stop the run. I'm curious to hear your perspective on certain things, but you do have to, if you want to make Grunkmeyer a freshman beat you with his arm and he beat you with his arm, okay.
Give him kudos.
Good job. But yeah, it's not going to be, he's going to have to really kind of rip it in there against a good pass defense. And he's going to have to prove some serious people that he's legitimate if he does that. Stack the box, dare them to pass. They're weak at receiving with their tight ends, aren't stellar either. That would give us the ability to put pressure on their quarterback as well. 100% agreed. And we got to get better at finishing those sacks.
This would be a week to do that.
Absolutely. It should be the same defensive game plan for both games left to make Penn State and Iowa pass the ball to win. I know it's not that simple, but play more 4-3 and less 5 defensive backs.
They don't play 5 a lot in obvious running situations or goal line. Like, I know that's they run the 3-3-5, but I don't care what the base is. If you just look on your screen, or if you're at the game,
four down linemen than we did last year, for instance. Last year, we didn't see 4 down linemen until we got absolutely destroyed in the run game against Indiana. And then we broke it out against Ohio State where we finally had 4 hands in the dirt. We're like, oh, yeah, it was more reactive because Indiana kind of ran the ball. They did whatever they wanted against us. And they're like, oh, yeah. And then we had success against Ohio State because we actually put 4 hands down in the dirt.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of RVP, Gabe Moore, Dason McCullough, and Williams Nowani this week at the line scrimmage. I think it'll be almost every snap.
Good to have Dason back.
It's huge.
It's going to be a big, his athleticism is going to be very, very important in this game. So let's go over and move over to the offensive side of the ball. And I think, Penn State people might be talking the same way we are about what Nebraska wants to do. But, they talked to Dana Holgorsen about it. And, he seems like he's got the confidence now that, Emmett can go 30 carries if need be, and I feel like they're going to be testing that this week and try to get him as far into that as they can. I think it's going to be, we might see a little early quarterback run again because Penn State does have a really good pass rush, and one of the ways to kind of contain that and kind of what we did with against UCLA was make them know that we can come out and run with the quarterback and kind of back them off a little bit. So offensively, how you feeling about this one?
I think it's a fairly decent matchup. I really like TJ's athleticism here. We talked about it, I think Tuesday last week or Friday, about his athleticism, being a factor for Nebraska. And I think Nebraska is honestly, they know that they really have to lean on Emmett Johnson right now. And that's going to be passing and running. It's going to be stretch plays. It's going to be, I think they execute the screen game, both from receiver screens and halfback screens at the highest level that they have probably since Pelini.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a bread and butter play that they're starting to go too late. We saw it in the middle of the season with the screen passes to Hunter, and now you've seen it with Emmett Johnson now. So there's 2 big screen plays that their offensive line has just mastered, being able to get out, get to the second level, and clear a lane. So I think you're going to see a lot of screens with Emmett. You could probably see him too with the other running backs, but this is a game to me where he has 25 rushing attempts and 10 receptions.
Yeah, And they talked about kind of the commitment to the blocking, because Dan Holgerson talked about when he came in just how bad the wide receiver blocking was. So it's good to see that, but also the downfield blocker for the lineman has really kind of taken a big step. And so you got to think, Penn State does have a lot of athleticism on their defense. They do have a lot of depth. So again, it's something that we're going to want to try to really kind of drive our way down the field. But if we can get some of those explosive plays in there and back them off, it's going to be really huge. But how much do you think we see TJ running?
I would put this a little higher than last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess you could say. I think he had 3 or 4 rushing attempts against UCLA. I think it's going to be maybe a little bit more. Nebraska's going to run 55 to 60, maybe 62 plays. I'd look for 40 of those to be rushing plays, and 5 to 7 of those go to TJ. I think Nebraska is really locked in with Emmett. They're going to let Nelson for a few plays just to give him a rest. Same thing with Mosey. But I think this is a game where Emmett goes nuts rushing the ball, and they use TJ to kind of take some of the pressure off, I guess, because they're keying in on Emmett, so they'll sneak some zone reads here and there.
Well, again, kind of like Penn State wants to do, just kind of back them off, with that ability to move their legs, and then limit some of that pass rush. And then at points you can let him kind of drop back and maybe try to see if he can, hit a deep throw here or there. Because again, a lot of this stuff we're going to want to see how it's going to work against Iowa. A lot of stuff. Penn State is a solid defensive team. They're well coached defensively, so it's going to be interesting to see. And the way their defense works, again, they run kind of that 4-2-5. They run a lot of 5 defensive backs. So if you can get them out of that and kind of open up, that depth down the field a little bit, and again, kind of let TJ see what he can do with that arm ripping it down the field, then you definitely want to see that, especially in the lead up to the Iowa game, because Iowa is one of those teams that they're going to try to keep everything in front of them related to football. So this week, more than any, we have to show that we can kind of sustain drives, and that's all going to start with them. Like you said, they talked about Mackay, and those guys are doing a lot, better in practice. But just when you have a hot hand like this, you have a guy that's in the Heisman conversation, it's hard to not give him 30 touches a game.
Especially a game of this magnitude where he can kind of basically, I don't want to say ensure he's a finalist for the Doak Walker Award. He was just announced as a semifinalist, but if you can take advantage of this moment on Saturday, that'll help towards his postseason awards, which, selfishly is good for him, but big picture, it's going to help with running back recruiting for EJ Barthel, just to be able to say, look what we did with Emma Johnson. I can do the same thing with you. But to me, it's not that I don't think that TJ can throw it. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. You just want to control this game as much as you can and keep it out of Nick Singleton's and Katron Allen's hands. I don't want to be in a situation where Nebraska has to stop them late and they've been on the field for 35 minutes because they can't get off the field throughout the game. I would rather control the clock, keep this to like a 17-14 type game or 21-17, keep it really low scoring, keep them off the field as much as possible, because if you're in a situation late and they're running it, you can't stop the run. It's just going to be very debilitating, I guess, and distressing as a fan to sit there knowing you can't do anything to stop them.
Let me ask you a question here, because, we are going to want to sustain those drives. Do you think we make more of a commitment to utilizing tight ends this week? Because, again, they were used a lot in the motions last week.
Mm-hmm.
I think that can really help open up a lot of the other offense if we kind of target them a little bit more, so that way those motions are more meaningful. Because, again, we didn't see them targeted a lot last week, over the last couple weeks. So if we can target them a little bit more. Again, like a lot of those motions are kind of what opened up that little screen pass out to Emmett, that went for a touchdown. Because, again, you motion Carter Nelson across, you have Heiner Carberg running that drag across, and that puts the numbers on that side of the field, and they just didn't have enough to stress it. But Penn State being a little bit better coached, you can't be as reliant on them as UCLA was to make those communication errors, or to not rotate over in time, or get their zone out, pass that zone off in time. So do you think we see a little bit more of a commitment to utilizing the tight ends in this game?
I think there should be, because they've been MIA for a couple weeks now. And I think Luke Lindenmeyer is a phenomenal tight end, especially considering the value as a walk-on, and he's your starting tight end. I think he's actually pretty grossly underrated for how physical he is, how good he is after the catch, how good he is catching in general. I remember when we did
what clutch time too.
Yeah,
clutch time. When he
I remember when we did previews, we were talking, and my perception of him was an inline blocker, not a great receiving threat, and I was completely wrong. I'm glad to admit that. I would like to see Nebraska use his skill set this week, because it'll open up other parts of the field too, in the passing game and the running game. Because right now, the last 3-4 weeks of tape is just your tight ends blocking and being a distraction in the passing game. So does maybe Penn State say, okay, they're not using their tight ends a lot, we'll focus more on stopping Dan Key or Hunter, and those opportunities will open up underneath for your check down option. They can actually be your primary option.
Yeah, because again, it's one of those things where, like UCLA, yeah, you can get away with potentially not using it, but you're at least going to have to target them against Penn State. And, Penn State does have really good linebacker play, so it's going to be a challenge for those guys to get open. But I think without them, I think this offense has a little bit of a tough grind when it comes to moving the ball down the field through the air.
Yeah, this is going to be probably one of our tougher games, I think, on the entire year. I don't care that Penn State's 4-6. I could care less. At the end of the day, that 2 deep is littered with NFL players.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a coach who kind of lost his team. It is what it is. I think James Franklin's still a great coach. But for whatever reason, yeah. And I think for whatever reason, just at the end of his tenure at Penn State, it stopped working. But that is still a loaded roster who's been a top 5 recruiting machine for however long he was at Penn State. What, 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
Tons of talent on that roster. I don't care about their record. They're damn good.
Well, and I talked about just how deep their defense was, because, last year they rotated like 37 guys to defense, and not because of injuries, just because they had that much talent on the defensive side of the ball, So they're a team that's also going to be really hard to wear out defensively, because they do have guys up and down that depth chart that are skilled. And so I think it's going to be a lot more this week. Of course, we are going to want to drive down the field and maybe get them tired on those drives, but it's going to be a lot more of what our play calling does to them this week, because it's going to have to be consistently finding openings. We can't just rely on them to potentially wear down in the fourth quarter, because, last week, again, they had a really solid fourth quarter. I think our defense doesn't quite have the depth that theirs does. So if we get into that, kind of ball control game where we're both trying to, nickel and dime our way down, I do think we're going to have to open it up and air out and take some, at least attempt some deep shots, because I think what we're kind of probably going to want to do is we are going to run some of those screen passes. We are going to run the ball a lot, but I think if we can kind of target that short middle of the field with our tight ends, I think it will really open up a lot of opportunities for Danke and Isaiah Hunter down the field, because we just haven't had that element. And I feel like that's something that, we really kind of need to see, because again, Iowa's going to let you keep everything in front of them, and they're going to rally to the football. So I think we do need to show that this week, that we have the ability to kind of open that up for ourselves with our play calling.
They're going to have to let TJ sling it a little bit. And
he can.
I know. Yeah. And I know I said, 55 to 65 plays or whatever, and 40 of those are rushes. So that leaves you 15 to 20 passing plays. Of those 15, let's say it's on the low end 15, like it was against UCLA, I'd like to see 3 deep shots. Whether that is sideline shots, down the seam shots, really could care less. It's just something to show you're not afraid to test that secondary. You're not afraid to stretch the secondary out a little bit there. And ideally, if you hit one of those, then they're more likely to play back a little bit more, because they're not afraid of it. And then that middle is open for Luke Lindenmeyer or Heinrich Harburg or whoever is running.
Yep. Not only that, it opens up your quarterback run game, because then you have those defensive backs playing like USC kind of did to us whenever, they kept running the ball, and then our aggressiveness on defense we had to back those guys off. And then you saw later in the game, they were able to kind of get that quarterback run going. Like, that's another thing too that we could set up, because we haven't, again, TJ Lateef, not a lot on film for him. So that's something they could also kind of similar to that game plan that USC. I would almost like to see that a little bit where you kind of set up that quarterback run going into that fourth quarter as well, and maybe take some of those shots, second, third quarter. You're running the ball a lot with Emmett, and then all of a sudden you kind of run that play action bootleg and you get TJ Lateef going. And then in the fourth quarter, like you can really at that point control the game because that's an element that Nebraska has that Penn State doesn't have. While Grunkenmeyer is athletic enough to be able to escape and move the pocket, and he can run when need be, he's not a really considered a dual threat quarterback. Whereas I think that's what can separate Nebraska in this game is if they kind of set that up in the fourth quarter. And I don't think a lot of people are kind of looking at that, but just look how it worked for USC whenever they set that quarterback run up in the fourth quarter.
God, it killed us. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing with Grunkenmeyer. He is like you said, no running threat. Like they're not going to call a single, knock on wood, but they're not going to call a single.
I wouldn't say no. Again, I think he's more athletic than people give him credit for, but just because he hasn't had to run the ball, and yeah. They're not going to run a lot of quarterback design plays, but he can. And I wouldn't be surprised if Andy Kotelnicki just kind of does it maybe once or twice.
Just to keep the defense honest, maybe.
Because he's athletic. He's not, a dual threat.
He's kind of a clunker when he runs. Does that make sense? Kind of just lumbering.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. He doesn't look like your fluid athletic quarterback for sure.
Yeah. So I think, for Nebraska is just limiting that running game from Penn State, doing enough to keep them honest on the defensive side of the ball with what you can do with your running game, your passing game. I really did like how against UCLA, it seemed that they were getting TJ out on the edge, rolling that pocket, giving him a couple quick reads and letting him make that decision. I think probably 3 times maybe in that game, they did a bootleg to the right and they found a crosser late basically. Mm-hmm. And it's a route concept I really like when everything's flooding to one side. It makes it super easy for your quarterback to make his reads while on the move. TJ's capable of making those throws on the run. We've seen that as well.
Yeah, it gives him a lot of time to kind of just process what's going on. And a young quarterback needs that. He's able to kind of see the different levels, and then he's already moving. So that way, on his high school film, it's all over his high school film where he can throw running either direction. He can square his hips up and throw, runs his left or right. So it's not too much of a concern with him throwing on the run. I think that's going to be a big point of this game is moving the pocket. But red zone offense is going to be extremely important in this game. Penn State they were better, albeit against a much worse defense, but they were better, in the red zone last week. They haven't shown the ability to score, but I just feel like we're going to have to. I feel like we're going to have to just show, and we've been better at it too. I feel like we've been a lot more consistent, and the play calling has been a little bit better in the red zone than previously. But I think the legs contribute to that. I think TJ Lateef's legs actually help us in the red zone.
100% agree. It's exactly what I was going to say. I think it just gives you more options. But also last week or 2 weeks ago, one thing I noticed in the red zone, they lined it up in the I formation, essentially, 3 times and ran it in. And they said, we're going to run it. We're running it. Everyone knows we're running it. And you have to stop us 4 times. And they didn't. And I'd like to see Nebraska, when they get in those, inside the 2, the 3, the 4 yard line, just say, you know what, we're going to out physical you here. Mm-hmm. I don't care. We'll run it. You'll know we're running it. You can bring in your, 6 defensive linemen, and we're still going to run it, and we're going to run it down your throat. That was a big change from previous weeks because they hadn't been doing that.
Yep. Yeah, establish that physicality, and then again, it's one of those things with Raiola. They can almost get away with kind of putting 7 guys at the goal line and just, killing you with that coverage and be like daring him to run. Lateef, they can't do that. They're going to have to be a little bit more creative with their defensive play calling, which is going to open up more opportunities for Nebraska to kind of get some guys free in the end zone. So I do think that is one of the big benefits of having TJ Lateef in there is just the red zone offense opens up a lot more. And that is going to be important in this game. So, because points could be hard to come by in this one.
Yeah, I think it will be.
So
this will be a low-scoring affair.
Let me dive in a couple of the comments, and we'll get into predictions here. They're the worst. Their worst rushing defensive games were against running quarterbacks. Oh, 100%. Because
It's another person that you have to cover.
Yeah, you'll let, like, again, like we talk about Iamaliva, like, you just weren't going to let him beat you with his arm. You had to give up something. Again, he's a talented quarterback. With a lot of these guys, it's just like, yeah, you can run all day, but you're not going to pass on us. And that commitment to knowing that our pass defense is going to be there, like, yeah, run around, run as much as you want, but we're not going to sacrifice our pass defense by committing two extra guys to come down or putting an extra guy on a spy just so you can then beat us with your arm. Keep running all you want, but you're not beating us with your arm. So, but this is a different level of running back than we've seen in previous weeks. So TJ's ball security going to be paramount for this game in the Iowa game. 100%. TJ used motion to help read the next two defenses. We're going to see a lot of motions. We saw it early and often in that game last week, and it was very successful. Definitely want 6, but this is where we need to take points where when we can. 3 is better than 0 on our drives. Yeah, we're going to have to just not settle for 3 as much as possible. I don't even want to come in with that mindset. We got to score touchdowns in this game because, again, points are going to be
a lot of positions.
It's not going to be a lot of opportunity. Again, they're going to want to limit our drives, limit our possessions by running the ball. They're probably going to do that. So when we do get opportunities to score, we have to get 7. So I agree, 3 is better than 0, but
let's just get 7.
3. I mean, if they're limiting you to 5-6 drives a game, or 6-7 drives a game, like, then those drives are much more important in value. It's not like we're going to be getting 10-12 drives this game. They're going to want to just run the clock on us, and they're probably going to do a good job of doing that. It's just a matter of, can we get off the field on 3rd down? And can we stop them in the red zone? Can we do better than them on 3rd down in the red zone? That's what this game is going to come down to. So, all right, let's hear how you think this game's going to go. Again,
I kind of alluded to it earlier.
So, yeah, let's hear it.
All right. I'm going to go, I think I said we got to keep it low. So like 21-17. I don't think Nebraska wins this game. I think the spread's a little egregious. I'll go 23, 17, Penn State.
23-17. How do you think the game's going to go?
I think Penn State's going to start off hot. They're going to get to a good lead. I think a halftime lead of like 10-3 is reasonable. And then Nebraska's going to come out hot in the second half, make a storming comeback, and then Penn State dominates the 4th. I wouldn't be shocked if it's like tied or, something like that at the end of the 3rd.
Call me crazy here. I don't have a ton of confidence in this game, but I'm feeling like, I just feel like this team will be juiced up for this game, and it's going to be a dogfight for sure. But I'm kind of in the 27-24, 24-24, 24-21 range for Nebraska.
What's the weather supposed to be like?
That's a good question. I have not looked. Yeah, I thought about looking earlier, but I didn't.
Where do they play at again?
State College.
I
believe so.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to take a look because that could change things too. If it's like pissing down rain or something. Perfect. It's going to be a 45 for the high, 36 for the low, and it's going to be 14% chance of rain during the game.
Yeah. So give me 24-21. A little bit more conservative in the offense. We scored 28 against UCLA, came out hot, but give me 24-21 Nebraska. So we'll be on opposite ends of the spectrum. Just that way we're not both predicting loss. But I do feel like this team might be juiced up defensively to maybe come out and have one of their better performances in terms of stopping the run. And again, against a quarterback that doesn't have the legs that you've seen in previous weeks. I think maybe seeing a guy like Nico, last week and having a running quarterback and then not having to worry about that. I feel like that can give this defense confidence. Like, hey, we just got to lock in on stopping these running backs. And, again, it was one thing with Drew Aller in there because I think Drew Aller has the ability to create a lot more offense than Grunkemeyer does because Drew Aller was a very efficient quarterback. And I think against a experienced defensive coordinator like John Butler, I think he can kind of force a guy like Grunkemeyer into maybe making some mistakes. And if our defensive backs play aggressive, we can come out and force a couple turnovers, maybe give ourselves a short field. So yeah, I'm going to go 24-21 Nebraska.
And I said what? 23-17 Penn State.
Yep. It's only a couple yards, but Harburg coming in motion and stopping, take the snap at QB was sweet. I agree. Yeah, it's finally something with Harburg worked.
That one actually went for 3-4 yards.
Crazy. I don't think I've ever seen a play with Harburg coming in and obviously running the ball go forward. So that was nice. 24-17, good guys. Well, Penn State, not any knock on Harburg. It's just the fact that they make it so obvious what they're doing when he's out there every single time. Will Penn State's talent show up? Or are they going to play like they have almost all year? Well, getting a little bit momentum. I mean, they've had some controversy with James Franklin. So any team is going to kind of struggle there. And then they had a gauntlet of teams when they go Iowa, Ohio State, Indiana. So I mean, they're battle tested. They're battle tested. And yeah, Indiana took a miraculous catch to win that game. So Penn State is
unrealistic for someone to think that catch would ever happen again.
That was ridiculous. I was actually upset that he made that catch. 24-20 Huskers, Nixon in Nebraska's favor. We got 24-17 Nebraska, never mind me. So we'll see how it goes. Brian, I just wanted to make sure that you were on your own over there. Now this week it's been racking my brain which direction to go, because I feel like, my mind's telling me Penn State, my heart's telling me Nebraska, but I just feel like I have a good feeling about this week. So we'll see.
I think I had this marked as a loss at the beginning of the year.
Lots changed since then.
Yeah. Let me ask you this before we get off.
Yeah.
So in your scenario, Nebraska wins.
Yep.
What do you think, or who do you think steps up that we haven't heard much of from recently or throughout the year?
It's a good question. We haven't heard much from recently. Because I was gonna say Lindenmeyer. But I don't know, man. That's tough because I feel like it's going to be a lot of the guys that we've relied on the majority of the time this season. But I think the Titans are going to have to be a little bit bigger part of this game. So I will say Lindenmeyer is going to step up more than he has in recent weeks, just because I feel like to win this game, we do have to utilize the Titans a bit more. Dane Key, of course, I think he's going to be a focal point this week. At least in big moments, I think he's going to make big catches. I think we're going to go to him in big moments. So because he's just your trusted guy with the hands and route running. So I do think in a game where yards at a premium, a guy like Dane Key getting out there and being able to come in and combat their man coverage and stuff like that's going to be important. So Lindenmeyer and Dane Key are two guys that I got my eyes on. Anybody you were thinking in particular?
I was thinking Williams, Nawarni, and Dasan McCullough.
Oh, so you're thinking more on the defense side, yeah.
Yeah. But Williams in the sense that we hear a lot of him getting rushed, like QB hurries. But I think this is a big week for him on the edge to win and get sacks and force a fumble or something like that. This is the week where I think he has that opportunity to get home a couple of times.
Strip sack fumble.
Something like that, yeah.
Bold prediction. One thing we will probably have the advantage in, and Penn State's pretty good on special teams, but I think our special teams, of course, is going to do their thing per usual. So Barney, Hunter, Deshaun for sure. It's going to be nice to have Deshaun back. So we missed his athleticism last week for sure.
Yeah.
But all right, guys. Well, I appreciate everybody tuning in. We will be here Friday for a call-in show. We will see y'all there. We have a guy I was talking about to come on this Tuesday for the Penn State week. He had work. So I might try to get him on for Friday so that way you can call him and ask him some questions. So y'all tune in on X at _H-Town Husker. Stay tuned for that. I will be posting there if he's going to be able to make it. And, of course, y'all go follow Brian at KC Husker24. He'll give you our recruiting updates and stuff like that. But is there anything else before we go ahead and wrap the show?
No, I think we're good.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Thank y'all as always, and we will see y'all in the next video. Peace.